Welcome to my journey through the Bible. This will be applications that we can apply to life and a little more in depth about the chapter. We are in Exodus 12, 1 through 51. And we see that they picked a lamb without blemish. Today, our perfect lamb is Jesus Christ. They had to give a life to save a life. And God accepted the life of an animal for the life of the firstborn of each person. And Jesus took our place on the cross. And he gave us life so that we would be able to have a relationship with God. Now, when the death angel saw the blood on the post frame of the house, they would pass over and move on. This was a sign of grace. God gives us grace. When we do something wrong, we ask for forgiveness and he gives it to us. Not because we deserve it, but because he loves us and because he gives us grace. He shows us mercy. And the Israelites ate the meat that was roasted, and they had unleavened bread, and they had bitter herbs. Now, the unleavened bread was because it would be easier and faster. A lot of times you have to wait for the bread to rise without the leaven. You can just cook it, eat it, and go on. But it's going to be more flat instead of fluffy. The bitter herbs just represented the bitterness of slavery. And they had to be ready. They ate with their clothes on, with their staff in their hand, their shoes on. This was a sign of their faith. They were still slaves, but this was a sign that they believed in God, that he was going to free them, and they were going to be dressed and they were going to be ready to go at a moment's notice. So eating with their clothes on was to show their faith. The Passover was to be open to anyone, and they were to be circumcised before they took part in the Passover. The circumcision was a sign of their faith. It was a sign from the covenant that God had made with Abraham and would have been passed on. Today, we need to be circumcised too. We need to be circumcised of our old self and accept the Holy Spirit and have a new life. God's truth is open to everyone. And the Passover was to be remembered year after year. Now, this was called a holy day. And the holy day was something that I used to keep when I was younger. The Passover was a day that we would gather with other church members and families and friends that all believed the same. And we would have a nice dinner and everybody would bring a dish and we would sit and we'd talk about the story. We would talk about how God had saved his people and how God is still working in our lives, even at the present day. And as far as the unleavened bread, we would spend a week beforehand trying to clean out our house and get rid of anything that had leaven in it. And then we would attempt to not eat any leavened bread for 7 days. This is very hard because anything that had yeast in it, you were not allowed to eat. And during the 7 days, sometimes you would get sidetracked and you'd pick something up and eat a piece of bread or eat a cracker that had leaven in it, and then you would realize, oh, I'm not supposed to be doing that this week. And so you throw it away and be like, I'm sorry, start fresh, let's start again. And this would make us realize how easy it is for sin to slip into our lives. Now, as a whole, as a world, what an amazing place this would be if we picked one thing. It didn't even have to be unleavened bread. It could say, I'm not going to have Coke anymore. I'm not going to watch YouTube. I'm not going to, whatever it is, I'm not going to do this. But when I do it, I'm going to realize that this is how easy it is for sin to slip into our life and we don't even realize it. Now, it is very important for us to pass down our religious traditions to our children and to help them to understand the meaning behind it, but don't lose the fact or the purpose that it's really more about God and who He is than what it is about the tradition. The tradition is just to help you to remember something very important, like these stories in the Bible. Now, the blood on the doorpost was the beginning picture of redemption. Redemption is where somebody comes in that's been captured and there's a ransom that has to be paid. God paid the ransom for each one of us. God showed us redemption through the death of Jesus. And it's just a very beautiful story. So may God be with you in everything and in every way.